But how about later? Well, with Telstra Prepaid Max, you can data bank up to 200 gigabytes to use later. Just remember, for use in Australia, active recharge required to bank and access data. Now, on with the podcast.
Darren Burgess, it's a name that is synonymous with elite high performance. Port Adelaide, as I said, Footy Federation, Liverpool, back to Port, bit of stuff with Arsenal, now at the Melbourne Footy Club, and he's been to join us in the studio. Welcome, Darren. Welcome to Melbourne.
Cheers, thanks. Good to be here.
How long have you been permanently here?
About 2 weeks, but been jumping around from mates' places. About a week now, so I'm happy that it's there.
This is an area that intrigues a lot of people. Strength, I don't know, how do you describe yourself? We say strength and conditioning, fit, what is it?
Fine. Honestly, fitness coach is fine. Yeah,
right.
That's about right.
And in terms of how travelled and how well travelled you are, you started at Port Adelaide, now you've been from a world sporting point of view. How much better would you be now, having been exposed to so much?
Yeah, I reckon just being exposed to football or soccer overseas helps, because it's a skill-based game similar to AFL, but the way they train is a whole lot differently.
In what way?
It's 97% skill, and the outcome of the game of football, soccer, I've got to keep calling it soccer here, is determined by skill, very rarely by fitness.
Right.
The fittest team's never going to win the comp. Manchester City or Liverpool aren't the fittest team, but they're the most skillful team because they've got the money.
See, and we were talking in the news break, and this is where I wanted to get to really early. The greatest sort of talking point in this area over, I reckon, the last 10 years or more, maybe 10, 15 years, is that the fitness staff have taken over the world, and that they determine how much training's been done, and they'll pull players off the. And it's got to the stage where the frustration of the older school is, well, the skill level's just deteriorating to that. They might be better runners, but the actual skill level's getting worse. So your experiences are it's not that way over in England, for instance?
No, certainly not. The coaches dictate 98% of what goes on, and very rarely do the best managers in the world, whether it's Klopp or Guardiola or Arsene Wenger, those guys, they dictate what's going on, and the fitness staff sort of band-aid around that.
And what sort of relationship did you have then with the managers over there? Was that sort of like, did you have a daily meeting with them, or that type of conversation took place daily with you and he?
Yeah, so with Arsene Wenger, for instance, my office was next to his, and we would meet every day about who can train, who can't train, whether to push or pull in the training session. But that was about it. After that, Arsene would dictate what the session was. Certainly with Unai Emery, he had his own sort of staff, so I had to work in with his fitness staff as to what was going on. And the average
fitness, say, of a Premier League footballer compared to an AFL footballer, what would you say?
Yeah, it's just 30 minutes longer. It's actually the same sort of metres per minute that they cover in the Premier League to the AFL. AFL just go 30 minutes longer. So the one thing that the Premier League players do a lot better than AFL is agility and power off the mark. So I always say the story that, and you won't like me saying this, but someone like a Robbie Gray, who we think has got the best agility in the world, would be a bang average centre-back in the Premier League in terms of agility. But in terms of endurance running, and obviously strength, upper body strength in particular, that's AFL all day.
So if I can get back, Darren, to the situation where you say the coaches over in England run 95%, and you said to us, as we were having a chat before you came on, that it was you didn't tell them what you wanted to do, you asked.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really big differentiation, because the perception now, whether it's right or not, is that the fitness staff tell the coaches what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think, firstly, in the clubs that I've worked at in soccer overseas, they're high profile, so it's win or bust. So the coaches kind of do it their way or the highway, because they know they've probably only got 6 weeks of crap results and they're out of a job. Also in the AFL, we draft players, so there's a commitment to develop those players, and it's a physical game, AFL, more so than what soccer is in the game. So physicality can sort of influence the result. So I'll preface it by saying that. But yeah, it's probably one of the attractions of coming back to the AFL was to have a greater impact on the team performance week to week than what you do in, say, NBA or NFL or soccer, because, the coaches generally listen a lot more. And hopefully I've got the balance right in that having been exposed to a lot of different coaches in different codes, I realise where we sit in the food chain, and that's pretty low.
Okay, so if I'm coaching Melbourne and the goal kicking's been an issue, and I say I want McDonald and I want Wiedemann and I want 3 others to finish training and have 100 shots at goal, what do you say?
100's probably a touch strong, but I've never kick counted in my life, and I never will, because ultimately everyone's results, particularly Melbourne's, depend a lot on how accurate, and we've been pretty crap. So I would certainly encourage a lot of kicks after training, but I'm not
to
sure
a limit. I know. But Jason Dunster would tell you, hey, work for him.
Yeah, I reckon the game, with all due respect to
that's
true
true.
legends who play, the game has changed a whole lot, and it's probably gone up 30-40% in the last 5 years. So imagine how much it's gone up from a speed and athletic point of view.
I accept that, yeah.
I know, the GPS numbers and that type of thing, which is really important data for you and the players and everybody concerned. One of the things we often hear and we talk about is, that player's just kicked the goal. Now he's going off the ground. He's at his peak now. He's he's motivated. He's ready to go again, and now he's coming off the ground. And people say, why is that? Why is that?
Yeah, without knowing for sure, obviously when goals are kicked, that's the easiest time to get somebody off. So that's probably the long and short answer. I used to have this argument a little bit in Port Adelaide, and this is going back a couple of years, obviously. I'd never take a player off if they kicked a goal.
Oh, it's music.
You just wouldn't. Well,
it's music, Darren.
I know, but I don't want to say
it's music. Don't change your mind on that.
What other people do is wrong, but I know playing amateur crap park soccer, if I've scored a goal or, I'm buzzing, I'm up and about.
And that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so.
What's more important?
It just depends on if that bloke's absolutely cooked and he's run 70 metres upfield to make a block and then sprint 100 metres downfield to kick a goal, then maybe he does, and the numbers say that he absolutely has to have a break. The other thing that perhaps some commentators might not be a bit... Most of the time, certainly with Port Adelaide, we would tell the players, come off when you need a break. So it was their decision a lot of the time, not always... runner or anything. It might be their decision. Listen, I'm absolutely knackered. I've got to come off.
So our response, don't worry about us. We're gnarly old. But our response to that is harden up. And part of this whole process is dominating your opponent mentally. You've just kicked 1 or you've just kicked 2 and then your rotation says you're coming off. I wouldn't go off if you put a fish hook in my eye because you're looking at him and going, I've got my opponent where I want him. He's doubting himself. He's had 2 kicked against him. He's worrying about what his coach is saying about him. I've got an opportunity to kick 3 and 4 here. I'm not letting him off the hook by sprinting to the damn boundary and sitting on the bench.
Yeah, there's certainly players I had to, Chad Wingard, Robbie Gray, Kane Corns, you could just never get them off. So there are players like that as well.
I guess specifically from a Melbourne point of view, what have you found when you've arrived there? You've had this great wealth of experience. You've been around. You've got something to measure them against. What have you found since you've been there?
Certainly the enthusiasm from the players and coaches is unbelievable. They really are determined to sort of, I guess, atone from last year, and the number of text messages and requests from players that I've got that I haven't even met yet saying, what should I be doing here? I'm in Hawaii, what should I be doing? I'm in Bali, what should I be doing? So been really, really positive from that point of view. And that happened, from back in July.
So you're a nightclub specialist as well?
Yeah.
I'm here in Bali. I'm here in Hawaii.
The surgery post-season was supposed to be one of the, in the wash-up, this is one of the reasons. But what's it look like from this year?
Oh, significantly better. And last year, look, I know there was a lot of, having done a bit of research on what happened last year, there was a lot of comment about their fitness or lack of, but the surgery just kills you. When you get 17, 18 players in surgery and I think 16 of them were in their best 22, it just kills you. So this year there's only been maybe 3 or 4 and there's probably only 1 player, maybe 2 who are their pre-season's going to be delayed a little bit. So we're in much better shape than what it was last year.
Can you never catch up? Is that the point?
Yeah, I just don't reckon you can catch up.
Ever.
No, unless you take the player out of...
And clubs are reluctant to do that, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about this each and every year, about this desire to be there for the first game of the season. Doesn't matter whether somebody's missed a lot of pre-season or not, but you've got to be there for the first game of the year. And it seems to me that most times the clubs bow to that pressure, or that pressure becomes so real within the organisation. They think, okay, we'll try and manage this guy through, but it never seems to work out.
No, I don't think you can ever catch up. And I reckon that's... The first round seems to take on 12 points, whereas it's the same as round 5 and 6. So that'll be the debate that you have is a fit, Jack Viney, or is an unfit Jack Viney, but who hasn't done a lot of pre-season, is he better than the next man up? That's the debate that you have for sure.
With Darren Burgess, who's joined the Melbourne Footy Club after starting in Port Adelaide and travelling the world. What about the body shape of the ideal AFL footballer today? It's evolved over time. It used to be about size and bulk, and then it's become a much leaner athlete that we look at today. We're staggered when when players come in here and sit down and we look at them, and they're just so lean as compared to what we've once knew. Is there an ideal shape?
I reckon for me, there's no ideal shape. There's an ideal shape for a position, I think, but realistically, I think sometimes people get a bit too excited by bulk and upper body size, and I reckon that can hurt you in a running game like AFL, particularly with the number of incidences of stress fractures and things like that. Size is just the natural enemy of feet, So I think being lean and a little bit less muscular is probably a good thing.
And I've been reading about Bruce too, about he's a huge man, but how his body shape has changed. I don't know whether it's been a dramatic change or just a subtle change, but how's that come about?
Yeah, he's certainly now. Obviously, I didn't see him last year, but they all say that he's taken off. I think it's 8-9 kilos.
That's a lot to take off.
Yeah, but he's a strong boy. Where he hasn't lost any size is through his hips, which is where you need the most of it. So, from what I saw in some handball games that we did yesterday, he was moving really well. So.
We've real-time feedback here, Darren. So people sort of wanted to talk about the Tom Lynch situation, which is a good point they've raised. It's a player that had limited pre-season. You may or may not be aware, given you're away, but limited pre-season, may have not have even played a practice match, but they got him to round 1 and he played, and then built his fitness in season, essentially. He played every game, I think, right through the grand final, and obviously his back half of the year was a lot better. So is that an example of someone being able to do it in season?
Yeah, I think in those positions you probably can do it a little bit more as well, and you can build some match fitness in those positions a little bit easier than what maybe you can some of the smaller positions for sure.
Melbourne supporters want to know about specific players, but you've only really had access to the first and fourth year with the occasional Maxi Gawn style.
Yeah. So and even I don't know most of the first or fourth years yet, but I'm getting to know them.
This is my question. Will you find out before the first game of the season, and will the players be aware of their breaking point in terms of how far they can push themselves? Because the body does extraordinary things, and maybe we've had 20 years of learning that over time. But I don't know. It's just I get a sense sometimes I see these younger players, particularly, who just have got no comprehension of just how far or how hard they can push themselves before it becomes I'm pulling out because I'm getting a bit sore, or I'm pulling out because I'm getting a bit tight. How do you balance that up?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it is a little bit of trial and error, unfortunately, because we want to push the players to close to their breaking point without tipping them over. But one of the things that we'll try and do as a staff with the players this year for sure is to let the players know that they can go a bit further than perhaps what they think they can. Yeah. So we'll keep pushing them and pushing them and pushing them, and keep giving them feedback that they're going well, and and occasionally having to pull someone out. But yeah, that's something that we'll endeavour to do so that round 1 they know that they can push themselves.
And are you prepared to have someone injure themselves, or no one wants to be injured, but I mean, this is a game. This is somewhere along the way you're going to get some injury, and are you prepared to break an egg to get the omelette, if you like? Ideally not. Ideally not. But is that unrealistic to think you're not?
It's especially in the situation that we're in with a group of players that because of their pre-season surgeries last year, they weren't able to complete a lot, and we want them to complete a lot. So that's a significant probability, is that during pre-season you just hope they're not the good players. But just during pre-season, there might be some issues for sure.
This whole training and conditioning goes in waves. I mean, we had the high altitude training and we've had the heat training. And what's your view on those? And what do you believe is the best way to get somebody fit?
With Port Adelaide, we went to heat, but just because you could play footy there, I just didn't really believe in going to altitude where you're hiking up hills and you're in indoor NFL grounds and things like that, just because, between Ken and I, we just wanted to make sure that we could teach the players footy.
Yep.
So to do that in heat, the physiological benefits of heat and altitude are almost identical. So if you can find a place where it's hot and you can still play footy, that would be my preference for sure.
What about over in Europe? What do they do differently that possibly we're not doing here in this strength and conditioning area?
They train a lot more.
A lot more?
A lot more, yeah. So, for example, we had issues, we had times in Arsenal where we trained 13 days in a row with some players. And they got through just fine.
So this is out of season, obviously?
No, in season. During the season, yeah, including games. And
when you say train, what sort of training?
So there were days where they would only train 3 or 4 kilometres, but that's the same as, say, a captain's run here in the AFL. The thing that probably most people don't realise, and straight away people will say, yeah, but you don't get tackled and there's no contact. So I get that, I understand that. But the average Premier League game has about 15 to 16 times more accelerations and decelerations than what an AFL game does. So, and that my job is I can't prevent contact injuries, but what you can hopefully prevent and train players is to get more exposure to those accelerations, decelerations, and what the Premier League and what most soccer clubs overseas do is they train a lot more so that the players become a little bit more durable to that.
Is there a real star system over there in the UK?
Yeah, there is.
Do they dictate?
They can, yeah. It depends on your club culture. Like you hear stories, for example, at Paris Saint-Germain where Neymar decides if Neymar trains or not. But we had a really good culture in Arsenal, and that none of the players' own physios and fitness coaches could come into training. But in other clubs, it's not so. Yeah, it's not that way.
Hey, Darren, we're going to run out of time, are you cognizant of the mental health challenge that exists here in Australian society, but it's certainly infiltrated sport, and I'm not sure if it's the same overseas, but it's one of the great issues that's facing our game. Yeah,
it probably hasn't gained as much traction overseas as what it has here, which is a bit, because a lot of the mental health blame is put on social media and things like that. And we've got players who've got 10, 11 million followers at Arsenal. I shouldn't say we, they have. So it's not always just social media. I think it's the pressure around and whether you choose to accept that pressure. But certainly at Melbourne, we're taking some pretty substantial steps in that space. Yeah, and factoring it into workloads and training. Absolutely. Because the hardest thing, again, is, and we talk about it a lot here, is you go, from a commentary point of view, we can only call what we see, but then from a coaching point of view, you can be looking at it and going, well, is there something else going on here? How hard do we push here? Should we be challenging more here? In the back of your mind, you're always wondering whether or not there's something else at play. Yeah, absolutely. And that's where the relationship between the psychologists and Goody and the performance staff is just massive, and we've worked on establishing that at Melbourne for sure. Are they the steps that you talked about just before that you're putting in place? Yes. Around this space? Yeah, absolutely. So having full-time psychologists, having regular exposure to regular conversations and meetings with both players and the psychologists and coaches, so that we talk about each player for an hour a week to see where they're at, and yeah, for sure. We're coming up to 8:30 News with Darren Burgess. So when do the big guns return from Melbourne? This is just an indulgent question for the last minute. When do the big guns return, and how often will they be training? Monday week, and they'll be doing 4 sessions a week on legs. So plus a couple of others, craft and gym and that sort of stuff. And how long would the sessions go for? And are there footballs involved? Yeah, football's from day one. I'm a big believer in that, and it's probably 80-20 and 90-10. In terms of football versus running. So they'll be out from the start.
I like it, Tim.
Yeah.
So I've got all my questions out.
Well, I think your coach, Simon Goodwin, looks like he's one of the fitter coaches in the competition as well. He spent a lot of time.
Hard, yes.
Spent a lot of time in the gym, does he?
Yeah, I don't see him though, so he gets in there very, very early. So yeah, I'm sure he does.
Hey,
It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, it has been great to talk to you. Thanks for coming in. I've been trying for a while, but you're now here, and we'll stay in touch and watch with great interest this pre-season unfold.
Cheers, guys.
Season unfold.
Cheers, guys.
Season unfold.
Cheers, guys.